Hi students, so in our previous tutorials we talked about how we can use patterns, maps, to create shading and adjust the colors of a surface and adjust the texture of a surface. The imperfections kind of give it the appearance of a surface that you could actually feel with your hand, for example. Now the bump map, which is what we used in the previous tutorial to give our concrete teapot a look of that actual concrete with the little cracks and indentations and whatnot, we used the bump map channel. I briefly mentioned in that tutorial that this isn't true texture. It's sort of a trick of the light, and having that omni light in our scene with the teapot allowed the computer to sort of calculate shadows and sort of trick us into thinking that there was actual geometry here when there really isn't. And again, that's a very powerful way to add detail that's not going to cost you on the render side. However, there are some times where we actually do want to use a material pattern to actually displace geometry. So what does that even mean? Let's make a plane, once again, and let's make our plane 2000 by 2000, and we are going to make a lot of segments. So 2000 by 2000. Oh my goodness. 2000 by 2000. One of these days I'll get it. Not sure why it's not letting me go past that. It's probably because my computer doesn't actually have a video card and it can't handle it. That's my guess. Anyways, if your computers will probably allow you to go above that. Anyways, so here's our plane. And I'm going to make sure that I have edged faces on, and we can see there are a lot of faces here to the point where we can't even see unless we zoom way in. There they are. Okay, so we could apply a bump map to this plane using our material editor, just like before, and when we hit render, we see all those little imperfections and that sort of texture. However, if I put an omni light in our scene, because we need that, throw that in there, we are going to see another option, which is basically called displacement, and it is a very powerful but very costly in the rendering department option. So we are going to use the displacement modifier. Just like before, we added edit poly, this time we're going to add displacement. And so far it doesn't look like much of anything. But if we look down here, we see a familiar term, bitmap, or a map. And I'm not sure why it has two different ones, but if we think about it, a map is going to lead us to our familiar panel of options and patterns that we can choose. So let's take a look at what that might look like. Let's throw some noise on there. And again, doesn't look like much yet, but that's because our strength of our displacement is still very low. And look what happens. As we increase, we can see the height of our plane is changing. And again, this is very tough on the hardware, and seeing as how my computer doesn't have a video card, things are a little stressed at the moment. But let's take a look at what that looks like. So you can see that little noisy pattern there, little bumping and dimpling, and that's actual changes to the physical geometry. That is not an optical illusion done by the computer. If we zoom in at the small level, we can see that as we continue to bring that up, the bumpiness is actually happening in the physical model itself. So why would we even want to do this? Because in reality, we could achieve a similar looking effect using a bump map and a material. Well, let's clear this out. We'll click Remove Map. And I'm going to show you what this is actually for. We're going to just use a straight bitmap, which is going to lead us to be able to choose an image. So if we back out and we go back to the textures thing, and I apologize, my textures are not on the V drive, but they are for you. I have a folder called Terrains, and there's 2 of them in here for the moment, and you can see that they look pretty weird. They're black and white images. What these actually are, these are what are called height maps, and you can see that the areas are dark is where the plane will remain flat, but as the image gets grayer and whiter, those areas are going to be deformed upward. So let's check it out. So we're going to grab this mountain here, and I'm actually going to turn off the edged faces because that makes it hard to see what we're doing. And now I'm going to bring that strength up more. And we can see that now our plane is actually being deformed based on that shading, that height map of that mountain. And we can do a quick render. And there's our mountainous landscape. So displacement modifier using a black and white graphic that depicts differences in height is a very powerful way to generate a terrain. Very cool. And then in addition to that, we can hop into the material editor and we can create a material for it. So let's see. Oh, I know. I've got a granite texture, or a granite bitmap that might work pretty well for this. So if we go into rock, and we grab the granite gray, and we throw that on there, see how that looks. So that looks wacky, but that's partly because our granite pattern is it's too big. We need to bring down the tiling. So we're going to bring that from 20 to 20, and we will see once again how this creates that repetitive effect. You can already see it on the sphere, but I'm going to show it to you here anyway. Alright. Alright, so it doesn't look too bad, but let's use the same technique that we used before to actually create a mixture of 2 different materials to help break down that regularity there. So we're going to click on bitmap, and just like before, we're going to grab a map that we can use to kind of mix it up, and smoke is a good one for that, as is noise. And we're going to keep that old map. That way we now have the granite in one slot, and I'm going to bring that up to take a look at that, and then I'm going to grab one more bitmap for granite light. So I just have 2 different granite textures there. And by doing a couple different values for tiling, so you can see I've got 5 for the lighter granite, and if I go into the darker granite, I'm going to bring that down to 10 because that was too high before. Alright, so we can already see how by mixing these 2 together, we break up the regularity. And let's see how that looks real quick. Already looking quite a bit better. Not perfect, but pretty good. I'm actually going to zoom in and take a look at how it looks close up. And there you have it. So that's yet another example of how you can use an image or a bitmap or a built-in 3D Studio Max map to actually cause physical changes to geometry, and you do that through the modifier. So that's the quick and easy way to create terrain in 3ds Max. And before we end, I'm actually going to swap out for the other picture because I haven't seen what that one looks like yet, just for fun. Whoa, that's crazy, but that's just because our strength is too high. So we're going to bring that down. Oh, yeah. And then we have a nice little mountain range with some rivers and things. even bring it down a tiny bit more. So there you go. Quick and easy terrain. That granite texture doesn't suit that too well. Alright, well that's it. See you next time.